Hare Krishna. Prabhupada. Namaste Narasimhaya. Dala dala dadaye. Dala dala dadaye. Hiranya kashi purasya. Hiranya kashi purasya.
Bhaktivedanta Manor ki honestly, I don't get the shot. Let me take it. You guys get the shot.
Don't fall, actually. Because it goes everything back.
Oh, my.
Someone lost the jewels. Maybe it's not on.
Is this yours? Oh, okay. That's what I was saying. Oh, I see. I thought it was more people. So do you want to sweep and I'll yes. I'll sweep it. Okay, thank you. Sorry for like. Oh, I see.
Remove the debris, you know.
Yeah. No, definitely makes sense. Sorry, we didn't used to do that before.
Yeah. But, I'll sweep it. It's a quick one.
has to be clean for this, right?
Hmm?
The water was clean for dipping them off, right?
Yes, usually it should be.
Okay. Thank you. Oh, sorry, Blue. Apologies.
That's mercy. Thank you.
Well, nothing happens without Krishna's permission, right?
Yes.
Be careful, it's a bit wet.
Thank you.
Prabhupada, are you okay?
Yeah, Prabhu.
Thank you.
There's a blessing, Prabhu, for us, like. Yeah. are you? Yeah, very well, bro. Thank you.
Are you saying that?
No, is the class at 7:30?
7:45.
And probably you're going to that class, right? Nice. I would love to stay, but I need to go home, cook something for Krishna, you know? Yeah.
Oh, you finished intro.
Yeah, thank you so much. That's fine. Okay. Hare Krishna. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girvaradhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girvaradhari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girvaradhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girvaradhari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama
Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Narayam Namaskritya Namche. Okay. So today we are going through Bhagavad-Gita 6.32. So that's chapter 6, verse 32. Atmaupamyena sarvatra samam pashyati arjuna sukham va yadi vadukam. Yeah, okay. Oh, wait. 6:32. Okay, start again. Atmaupamyena sarvatra. 6.32. 32. Okay, fine. Atmaupamyena sarvatra samam pashyati arjuna sukham va yati va dukham sa yogi paramo matah. Atmaupamyena sarvatra samam pashyati arjuna sukham va yadi va dukham sa yogi paramo matah. What? Atma with his self. Upamyena by comparison. Sarvatra everywhere. Samam equally. Pashyati sees. Yah he who. Arjuna O Arjuna. Sukham happiness. Va or. Yadi if. Va or. Dukham distress. Sa such. Yogi a transcendentalist. Parama perfect. Mata is considered. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Translation. He is a perfect yogi who, by comparison to his own self, sees the true equality of all beings in both their happiness and their distress, O Arjuna. Please repeat after me. He is a perfect yogi who, by comparison to his own self, sees the true equality of all beings in both their happiness and their distress, O Arjuna. Purport. One who is Krishna conscious is a perfect yogi. He is aware of everyone's happiness and distress by dint of his own personal experience. The cause of the distress of a living entity is forgetfulness of his relationship with God. And the cause of happiness is knowing Krishna to be the supreme enjoyer of all the activities of the human being, the proprietor of all lands and planets, and the sincerest friend of all living entities. The perfect yogi knows that the living being who is conditioned by the modes of material nature is subjected to the threefold material miseries due to forgetfulness of his relationship with Krishna. And because one in Krishna consciousness is happy, he tries to distribute the knowledge of Krishna everywhere. Since the perfect yogi tries to broadcast the importance of becoming Krishna conscious, he is the best philanthropist in the world, and he is the dearest servitor of the Lord. Nacha tasman manusheshu kashchin me priya kritama. Bhagavad-Gita 18.69. In other words, a devotee of the Lord always looks to the welfare of all living entities, and in this way he is factually the friend of everyone. He is the best yogi because he does not desire perfection yoga for his personal benefit, but tries for others also. He does not envy his fellow living entities. Here is a contrast between a pure devotee of the Lord and a yogi interested only in his personal elevation. The yogi who has withdrawn to a secluded place in order to meditate perfectly may not be as perfect as a devotee who is trying his best to turn every man towards Krishna consciousness. Invocation prayers. Om Jnanatimrandasya Jnananjana Shalakya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Gurun Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamascha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadhavaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamascha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinu Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Prishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhyubhe Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Nittinamine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Prabhupada ki jai. Firstly, I request your blessings from both everybody online as well as yourself, so that I can remember that it's not me sitting on this Vyasasana speaking, giving class. It is actually Sri Vyasadeva using me as an instrument to preach and give the class. And in that way, please pray that I can say something meaningful, something that you can take away from the class, and something that is purifying for myself, because as we all will say, we all require the purification, and I definitely do. Hare Krishna. So I am going to reread the translation, and something that I've done previously, if people have heard my classes before, is I like to pick out certain parts of the translation and really pick on the phrases that Srila Prabhupada uses or Krishna uses. So, Bhagavad-Gita 6.32. He is a perfect yogi who, by comparison to his own self, sees the true equality of all beings in both their happiness and their distress, O Arjuna. So, right off the back, we see, okay, chapter 6 is all about Dhyana Yoga. And through the chapter, we see that there's a progressive system of, okay, how do you practice Dhyana Yoga and what does it actually mean? And throughout most of the purports in this chapter, we see Srila Prabhupada always linking it back to Bhakti Yoga, the practice of Krishna consciousness. And this is basically one of the key verses to actually understand why he's doing that. Because Krishna starts the verse by saying, he is a perfect yogi, right? And in the purport, Srila Prabhupada is referencing that perfect yogi to be one who is in Krishna conscious. So one who is Krishna conscious is a perfect yogi. Now, what does this actually mean? Does that mean that we are all, perfect yogis according to this verse? The key thing here is that it's one who is Krishna conscious, right? So I will put my hand up and say that 24/7, 365 days a year, I do not think of Krishna, right? So I'm trying to practice the process of becoming a perfect yogi, but I'm not perfect by any means, because I'm not fully in Krishna consciousness. My consciousness is not Krishna conscious. But then we go on, and Srila Prabhupada talks about by comparison to his own self in the translation. And that's one of the key things that I actually want to focus on here, because we can see that part of the process of Krishna consciousness is to really introspect within ourselves and really see, okay, what is going on inside of us. Anarthas, when we speak to people, when we are practicing our sadhana, when we are just in the association of sadhus, when we are in our own time, in our own room, closed doors, laptop open, what are we doing, right? And this whole aspect is looking at everybody else in the light of comparing them to ourselves, comparing them to our introspection of, how are we actually doing? And one aspect here is that the ideal situation, because we're in Krishna consciousness, is that we will see that, okay, we are part and parcel of Krishna, we're just covered by material modes of nature. And that's why we might engage in non-Krishna conscious activities. Same way when we look at other living entities, whether that be other people, pets, or just insects that we even see sometimes in the temple room, right? Our concept should be, okay, they are also parts and parcels of Krishna, but they are covered by their modes. That covering could come in the form of subtle body, right? The way they use their intelligence, the way they apply their mind, and the whole aspect of the false ego. But then it could also transpire into the body that they have acquired. Human body versus animal body versus insect body. These are all just coverings. In Bhagavad-Gita 5.18, Krishna actually talks about the aspect of equal vision, which I think really puts this in perspective. So I'll just read the translation. The humble sages, by virtue of true knowledge, see with equal vision a learned and gentle brahmana, a cow, an elephant, a dog, and a dog-eater, an outcast. Now, just from this verse, you can see that he starts off with a brahmana, who is, even in modern days, seen as very elevated souls, elevated people by standards. But then the next is a cow, elephant, dog, and he even goes to the point of saying that somebody who has true knowledge sees a brahmana and a dog-eater as the same, right? In India, when you go, we actually, I've seen it myself, although I haven't been for quite a few years. But sometimes when outcasts come close to us, etc., we're like, shoo them away. Like, don't come close to me. You're tainted. We don't want your association. But here's somebody who is learned with true knowledge, sees everyone as equal. Why? It's not because I see the same form as yourself in somebody else. It's the fact that I see you as a part and parcel of Krishna. Instead of looking at the coverings that you've got, I actually look what's inside you, the soul, the super soul. And aspect that to the fact that we're all the same in that sense, where we're all parts and parcels of Krishna. We're individuals, but we're part and parcels of Krishna. So going back to the aspect of Srila Prabhupada saying that one who is Krishna conscious is a perfect yogi, what does that actually mean, like to be a perfect yogi? Because when we look at modern day yoga, we see, okay, people are doing all these sorts of, exercises, like showing their flexibility, showing that they can breathe, all these different breathing techniques. But yoga actually means to connect. And the practice of yoga should mean that we should connect to something. But what do we connect to? We could say we are going to connect with each other. But over time, if we start analyzing that and start introspecting, okay, how does that relationship work? Then we see it's temporary. At some point, either the relationship will break down or inevitable death will separate us. Okay, so it can't be, my friends or peers, etc. Okay, maybe family, because, sure, I might have my parents, but then I have children as well. But again, same thing. Parents will perish, and so will children. If the children don't perish before me, then I will perish, and therefore the children don't have that relationship. So that aspect of yoga doesn't work. Okay, let's just stick to myself, this body. But we learn that even this body perishes, right? Old age, disease, death is inevitable. So how can the aim of yoga be to connect just with the body? The actual connection of yoga is to connect with God, the Supreme, right? Krishna. And when we actually understand that aspect, right, then as we go further in the purport, we see that Srila Prabhupada talks about how happiness comes from our relationship with Krishna and distress comes from the absence of that knowledge that our happiness comes from Krishna. We forget our relationship with Krishna. So when we start seeing that, we can see, okay, we're practicing yoga. We have a goal in mind. We understand that we're starting to develop a relationship with Krishna. But these living entities, they may be non-devotees, they may be neophyte devotees per se, relative to us. Maybe they've just started their Krishna conscious journey, or even animals, insects, etc. Instead of looking at them and saying, oh, you're different to me, I'm going to seclude myself over here because you're different, you're not practicing the same thing, you're not at the same place as I am. You can start seeing them with that vision of compassion, that love. And the whole idea is that when you are at the stage where you actually find that, okay, yes, you found something that is giving you true happiness, permanent happiness in Krishna consciousness, then you want to give that to other people because you're like, I'm happy, this person or this entity should be happy too. And the other aspect is that you realize that happiness comes from pleasing Krishna. And Srila Prabhupada, I will say, my apologies to Srila Prabhupada. When I read the purport the first time, I was preparing for this class, I was thinking, I'm going to mention this point, and then it was like, oh, Srila Prabhupada's already taken it. So his whole aspect of Bhagavad-Gita 18.69, which is, Nacha tasman manushyeshu kashchin me priyakritama. And the translation, there is no servant in this world more dear to me than he, nor will there ever be one more dear. Who is he referring to here? In 18.68. For one who explains this supreme secret to the devotees, pure devotional service is guaranteed, and at the end he will come back to me. What secret is he talking about? 18.67. This confidential knowledge may never be explained to those who are not austere or devoted or engaged in devotional service, nor to one who is envious of me. And the whole aspect is preaching, right? Abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. I shall deliver you from all sinful reactions. Do not fear. This is from 18.66. So Srila Prabhupada has basically given us the direction on, how we can please Krishna. What is the topmost thing that will please Krishna? It's not us just developing our relationship with Krishna. It's us realizing that there are so many people out there, there are so many entities out there that have lost or forgotten their relationship with Krishna. Krishna wants us, all of us, to actually help them develop their relationship with Krishna. Bring them closer to Krishna consciousness. If they're in Krishna consciousness, find ways to help them grow in their Krishna consciousness. And the aspect here is service. For the seniors, the service is to explain things or pull their juniors up to go, okay, here's how you practice better, here's how you perform your sadhana better, here's service that you can do, and raise them up. The service of juniors is to submissively hear and inquire from the seniors. Spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, even just seniors that are around us, some in the temple, even some outside the temple. Our service to them is to listen, inquire from them submissively with the attitude that we want to implement what they're saying, not just listen for the sake of listening. Because if we listen for the sake of listening, that ultimately just becomes a normal mundane thing. We just listen to something because we just enjoy it, Like I listen to morning class because I just enjoy listening to Jyota Gaurapuram Prabhu. It was just a pastime for me. It was passing my time. Sorry, not pastime, passing my time. But if we're actually serious, if we actually want to please Krishna, then we will try and find ways, trying to understand what pleases Krishna. And he's said it outright in Bhagavad-Gita at the end. This is what pleases me. Preach about what you've just heard in Bhagavad-Gita. Don't just keep it to yourself. Preach about it. Srila Prabhupada nicely then goes on to talk about the difference between a pure devotee of the Lord and a yogi, interested only in his personal elevation. So now this is the difference between somebody who is reading Bhagavad-Gita for the sake of their own sense gratification, their own personal gains, versus somebody who is looking to please Krishna, who is actually looking to develop their relationship with Krishna. One can easily take from the Bhagavad-Gita that, okay, we have to practice yoga, we have to go deeper in our Krishna consciousness, and that's it. Because all Krishna wants is for us to surrender unto him. Fine, I'll surrender unto him. I'll perform everything that ISKCON has told me to do, chanting, reading, etc., listening to classes. And I'll just stick to myself, I'll go into my room, stay there, and chant 64 rounds a day, read 5 hours of lectures, read 5 hours of books, listen to 5 hours of lectures, and then sleep a little, eat a little, prasadam, done. But actually, if we're trying to please Krishna, then we should realize that we need to preach, because that's what Krishna wants us to do. So whilst a yogi is interested in his personal elevation, somebody who's trying to develop their relationship with Krishna is always looking at ways on how to please Krishna. If you imagine your material relationships, your family, friends, etc., you don't just come together and go, okay, right, let's get together, spend 5-10 minutes together, and then separate. No, that's not how a relationship develops. A relationship develops by loving exchanges. We actually look at ways in which we can please the other person. And it doesn't matter what relationship we're trying to develop. It could be husband-wife, it could be two friends, it could be two associates, two devotees just wanting to have sadhu sangha together. It could be a senior and a junior devotee trying to develop that sort of relationship, spiritual master and a disciple. We're always looking at ways to please each other. So why would Krishna be any different? Oftentimes, and I've heard this quite a lot recently, discussing this with devotees, we just need to read, we just need to do all these things, and at some point we just need to chant, right? Srila Prabhupada always says, just chant and be happy, or chanting is the key. And I'll chant, and then eventually, I'll develop that relationship, eventually things will come, eventually I will know Krishna. But is that really how it works? If you just chant your friend's name 24/7, do you really understand what your friend actually wants? And I'm not saying you can't chant and know that, because the holy names are potent. The holy names are non-different from Krishna. But the aspect here is that there's a fine print. It's chanting the holy names without offense. And it is so difficult to chant without offense. I think we all can attest to it, even those are 9, right? So we need to actually find out about Krishna so that we can chant better. And with chanting better, we want to know Krishna better. So that's the difference between a yogi and a pure devotee. A pure devotee is always looking at ways to develop their relationship with Krishna and please Krishna. Whilst a yogi is just interested in how can I become perfect. So one thing that this reminded me of is a section from the Bible. It's a very common one. do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Now, we in the material world, we have so many things called happinesses, which are in reality, as if we introspect, are just pleasures, temporary pleasures, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 1 hour, gaming, or topmost, as Sri Prabhupada would say, sex life. TV is a common one these days, going to the cinemas, restaurants, etc. They're temporary pleasures. You enjoy it. Restaurants, you go to the restaurant, after a couple of times you go, you're like, okay, I need to go to the toilet now, and you have stomach problems. Sex life, ultimately, you end up with a child that you have to look after, austerities. Gaming, you get fried from gaming these days. Like a lot of the modern games, I would know because I used to play a lot, are very competitive. Jay. They're very competitive. Somebody's a winner, somebody's a loser. If you're on the loser side, then you get fried out. You're like, no, I should have won. All these things, TV serials, you start comparing, especially Indian operas, soap operas. Hare Krishna. They are very much about family life, or you've got good people, bad people, and then you start applying them to your family. Like, oh no, she's the kutila of the family, and all these sorts of things, And then that ultimately brings you distress in the end. It doesn't actually bring you happiness. It's pleasure. It's pleasurable in the moment. It might be pleasurable for a short period of time afterwards, because you reflect on, it was such a nice episode, it was such a nice game, it was such a nice time with my partner, etc., etc. But then the end result is that it's going to bring distress into your life. So we want to come out of that. And if we saw somebody had a secret formula, per se, a secret antidote to all the distress in the world, we'd be like, share it with us, give it to us. We have that formula. The Mahamantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Through that chanting process, through Srila Prabhupada, through the ISKCON movement, we have all these ways that we can develop that eternal happiness, something that will actually give us happiness that is sustainable, that is actually going to go with us wherever we go, whether we're in this material body or outside it. Right? It stays with us. And so the aspect here is that why would we not want to give it to others? If we ourselves would want that formula to be given to us, if somebody else had it, why should we be so selfish as to not give it to others? And that's the act of being compassionate towards others. That's the act of loving others as parts and parcels of Krishna, as opposed to the material body. I might have my grudges against you because, I don't know, maybe you do certain things that I don't like. I have pet peeves, for example. I won't say them. But there are certain pet peeves. But when I understand that, actually, you know what? It's just one of your conditionings. It's one of my conditionings that I have the pet peeve in the first place. But it's also one of your conditionings to have something that could irritate others. When I can have the vision to look beyond that and actually see, hang on a second, you're a part and parcel of Krishna. You're just covered and I'm covered, and therefore I have these grudges. Then I can actually come to you with that compassionate mood, with that loving mood, and actually give you something that we all want, we all need. And it's something we all are actually secretly hankering for, but we just don't realize it. And another thing that comes to mind here is the whole aspect of ahimsa, right? Non-violence. Now, if you ask anybody in modern day and age who hasn't been practicing or hasn't studied Srila Prabhupada's books at some point, they say, yeah, ahimsa is non-violence, I don't go punching you, right? You do whatever you want, I don't go punching you, I don't go killing you, I don't go stabbing you, I don't do anything like that. Some people who have a bit more intellectual knowledge, they might even say, I don't say things or do things that are harmful to you in terms of like torturing your mindset, etc., right? Causing you to be agitated in the mind. But Srila Prabhupada gives us a very, very, very strong and potent point. Ahimsa means that people should be trained in such a way that the full utilization of the human body can be achieved. The full utilization. The human body is meant for spiritual realization So any movement or any commissions who do not further the end commit violence on the human body. So do not further the end, that end commit violence on the human body. That which furthers the future spiritual happiness of the people in general is called non-violence. How do we break that down? We have this secret formula, and I put quotes there because it's secret for those who don't want it, but we as devotees want to give it. And we understand that this secret formula is spiritual. We understand that the human form of life is the form of life for us to develop that spiritual connection, to actually develop ourselves to go back home, back to Godhead. When we understand this, when we have this knowledge, the fact that we don't go out and give it to somebody is violence. So this is Srila Prabhupada telling us through this aspect of ahimsa that actually we should be preaching. Preaching doesn't just have to be through words. It could be through character. It could be through association. But the most potent, yes, is of course through words. By giving people the Maha Mantra, by giving people that Krishna conscious knowledge, information, we are acting in ahimsa. Yeah, non-violence. We are saving ourselves from committing violence. So the last thing before I finish the class is I just want to talk about the whole aspect of personal benefit. Just to give an example, like, okay, we're talking about just theory here, like, who actually has been, who is a good example of somebody who is being practicing Krishna consciousness in whatever shape or form and actually going out and not just keeping it to themselves. And the one person that really comes to mind, as we all can probably think of, is Sri Prabhupada. He was perfectly situated in Vrindavan, just going deep himself, absorbing himself. I mean, I recall that there were pastimes where I think it was the janitor or something would sometimes hear at night that somebody's sweeping the courtyard and crying. And that was Srila Prabhupada. He was perfectly situated to just go deep, to just absorb himself and just really develop his relationship with Sri Radhakrishna, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He left all those comforts to come to the West for rascals like us. And we can't preach. We can't commit ourselves to preach. Every moment, every second should be used in preaching. We can't necessarily go out 24/7 and preach, but with our character we should be thinking, okay, is this what will please Krishna? Is this what will please Srila Prabhupada? And at the very least, even if you can't speak 24/7 about Krishna consciousness and preach people, at least act in such a way that people see, yes, here's a devotee, Here's somebody I want to associate with. Hare Krishna. Any questions, comments, chastisements, feedback?
Chastisements, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for the class, Prabhu. Some thoughts from other devotees, or at least to be able to give, you have to also be pure yourself. And there's also contradictions that giving makes you pure. Is it right to think that I can't give my full extent until I purify myself fully? Is that a right mentality to have? To have access to one's swarup, or access to full realizations, and then only I can give. Otherwise, what I'm giving is partial realization. Is not beneficial. Please share your thoughts on that.
So that's a really nice question. In terms of the full extent aspect, I'll deal with that part first because I think that's easier to deal with. Somewhat you're correct, right? If we're not deeply absorbed in Krishna consciousness ourselves, how can we make somebody a pure devotee? We can't. We can only make them to the level that we are. And then it's by their good fortune, by their endeavor, that they may surpass us. Oftentimes we all look at people, maybe they've just come to the movement and stuff, and maybe we are the ones that preached to them in the first place. They've come in, they're practicing, and then we're like, oh my God, they're so good, It's because I preached to them that they became so good. But the reality is, no. It's because you preached that Krishna, Sri Prabhupada, used you as an instrument to bring them into the movement. But it's their endeavor and Krishna's mercy that got them to where they are. Now, a pastime that I do recall, I believe it was a young girl who Sri Prabhupada actually was really praising. A young girl, how much would a young girl know? I think she was maybe 10 years old or something. I don't remember the details. But she would go out on the streets and she would just do you know Krishna? This is during Sri Prabhupada's time. Do you know Krishna? Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That was her preaching. She didn't know any Siddhanta. She didn't have the deep absorption. I mean, how would she? Right? Good luck trying to get a 10-year-old kid reading Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu or something like that, Or even the Nectar of Devotion that Sri Prabhupada's tried to make easy for us. So we can preach at any point. The fact that we have something special is a reason enough for us to preach. So then the question comes, okay, well, what do I do then? Because if I don't have the depth, I can't make them, better devotees. But if I'm preaching, then how do I develop the depth? They both go hand in hand. The fact that, and Sri Prabhupada actually talks about this in the purport. I can't find the exact line, but it was talking about how a pure devotee doesn't, paraphrasing, a pure devotee doesn't look to go deeper for themselves. They look to go deeper for others. So that should be our mood. Oftentimes we're reading books and stuff and just seeing, okay, how can it help me? How can it help me? How can I help me? How can I grow? But we often forget that we can use this for preaching. Not necessarily the line that we read or that we're trying to internalize, but the mood that we're learning about. How can we help that in our preaching? Maybe it's a character trait that we want to develop before preaching, or maybe it's something that we can help and give to others during that preaching. So we can preach at any moment. The fact that we have the Maha Mantra, the fact that we're in Krishna consciousness, practicing for how long? 1 second to 1 day to 1 year to 1 lifetime, we can preach. But the desire to preach should develop the desire to go deeper, and that desire to go deeper should be so that we can preach, as well as for the sake of going deeper ourselves. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments, feedback, chastisements, improvements? Okay. Bringing it just normal. Okay. So Hare Krishna. Thank you for tuning in to the class. Thank you for attending the class. Thank you for your question as well. And please do forgive me if I've made any mistakes. And please do pray that I can improve myself and get pure myself so that I can practice the art of preaching that I've just said, right? So that I can preach and go deeper so that I can preach. But yeah. Srimad Bhagavad-Gita ki jai. Sri Prabhupada ki jai. Boo. Hare Krishna.
I forgot it, you know, I forgot it.
Class is finished now.
That's right. 8 minutes count.
Sorry?
1 minute.
Okay.
He needs you for 1 minute.
Serious problems.
You have no serious problem.
I have a serious problem with this one.
Oh, I see, like that. You have some rascal with it.
10 or 12 years ago, your Mosa, your mom's sister's husband in Oxford,
Okay.
the electrician guy or something, he did this for us.
Correct.
He had given us a diagram, all lost it.